I'm Manwara Ali, and I'm live on my favorite platforms. So last week, I promised that I would be here every Saturday for the next 4 Saturdays to talk about community leadership and how to manage strategically. So, as promised, I'm on my favorite platforms, LinkedIn and YouTube. If you are not following any of my platforms, please do so. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm doing this on Saturdays just to help people understand a bit more about how to manage strategically, and particularly to help you, if you're someone considering of leading within your community, how to transition from managing or being an excellent manager to somebody who then can manage strategically for their organization, for their community. So I've got 3 key tips that I want to share with you, and I'm going to share them with you on Saturdays. Today, I'm going to only focus on one thing. So feel free to ask me any questions while I'm here or afterwards. You do not have to, leave your name. Any comments will be most welcome, and I'm happy to address if you have any specific questions. So why voluntary sector? Why the nonprofit sector? Well, I am extremely passionate about the community voluntary sector because I feel when times of crisis, non-profit sector, the voluntary sector are complete enablers. And I don't think anybody or any other sector could say the same. So we take COVID, for example. When we were hit by a global pandemic, the enablers within our communities were those community leaders, the non-profit leaders who continued to do things. Even colleagues and friends of mine that work for other charities and the non-profit sector had shared with me at the time that even though they were furloughed, they were still helping the community. So they were still an enabler. And I think this is where community leadership needs to change. The voluntary sector needs to have better representation, as in, so the first point being, to manage strategically, you need to understand the bigger picture. Going back to what I just said about being in a good position to enable others, we need to know what the bigger picture is. And a lot of that is based on our understanding of data that's available. In order to manage well strategically, we need to have a focus on the bigger picture. And I cannot begin to emphasize the need to understand the bigger picture via research and data. So if you're a voluntary sector leader who is following me on either of my platforms, hopefully watching this, you wonder, how am I supposed to do that when I'm juggling 10 plates in my work? There's so much that needs to be done. I can't take my time away. I cannot emphasize to you the only way your organization will be in a better position to raise funds, be in a better position to market and advertise for people to actually know that you exist. You need to understand the bigger picture. Your purpose, your mission, all of that is dependent on what you pick up from research, because the world moves really fast, and evolution means that we must keep up with those changes. So what used to be the case 10 years ago. You could be running an organization that you've been running for the last 10 years in one way. However, research will demonstrate that things have changed quite a bit. Research will demonstrate what your audience or what your service users need. So without understanding or having that data insight, you're kind of working in the blind. So if I give you a real example of research data that I have found really insightful, for example, in working in the voluntary sector, some of this research has been shared by the Chartered Institute of Fundraising, the third sector, civil society, and more recently, the National Council of Voluntary Organizations. So this week, I came across their research around the composition of the voluntary sector, the not-for-profit sector. And it was quite eye-opening. And it has, in a lot of ways, influenced the way that I move forward in terms of my work. And I know that any charity organization I am connected to or I provide mentoring or coaching to, that's the kind of information I will be highlighting. So it's really interesting that the NCVO research demonstrates that 90% of the voluntary sector that they actually got to engage with their research, 90% of people identified as being white in the voluntary sector. So what does that tell us? To me, that's suggestive of the sector needing a bit of shaking. Many more people that look like me and have lived experience of working with communities need to step up to lead their communities. Communities are going to suffer. Resources are always going to be limited. And I do advocate for collaboration because at the end of the day, whether you work in the public sector, community sector, voluntary sector, or private sector, we're all human and we're all trying to do our jobs. When there's an absence of leadership within the voluntary sector, which already gets a lot of slack, especially on social media and anyway in the media, really, the voluntary sector gets a lot of slack. You know, why are CEOs being paid so much, etc. I can tell you that CEOs get paid very little for the work that they do. But it is crucial for CEOs and anybody, whether they have the CEO title or not, that works in the voluntary sector, that they feel confident to lead their communities. And confidence comes from knowledge and experience. And this is why I am talking today about understanding the bigger picture. What is it like out there? How have things changed from the 10 years that you've been running your organization or you've been leading your particular charity? That is so key to moving forward and key to sustainability. And that can only be done if the organization has somebody right at the top, as in the person who's leading the organization, developing a culture within the organization, putting systems in place, which mean that we place importance in research and data. So this is the reason why research and data can really inform our work, and managing strategically requires you to be paying attention to data. Now, in the non-for-profit sector, what we tend to do is be very operational, right? So the sector doesn't have a good reputation for being fed any resources or prioritized with resources. The sector also has a bad reputation for its level of professionalism. Now, I've always worked with leaders who have been extremely transparent and accountable for women or men that are leading their organizations. However, one thing that affects most of these leaders has been how they feel that they are perceived. And often that can stop people from stepping up to lead their communities. So when you are managing strategically and you want to know or understand the bigger picture, and research is hugely important for that. Part of that research is also networking. You need to be networking so that you're meeting people like myself and other leaders where we can see where connect by understanding what our common experiences are and our common challenges are. My greatest learning has come from talking to other CEOs and discussing and understanding some of their challenges. It's helped me because somebody that I have brokered a relationship with, started with networking, has felt trust in me to share some of their challenges. And it's almost like you find sounding boards because that is so necessary. Our resource strapped sector is never going to get funding, or funding is never going to be prioritized for coaching or mentoring. So it's very important that we support each other, and it all starts with networking. So you can make whatever assumption you want about people like Manwara leading or running a particular initiative or community project. But at the end of the day, when you start talking and you start to make some allowances for those judgments that you hold, you realize that in many ways our challenges are very similar. So networking is key, and shifting your focus. So when you're thinking about managing strategically, and where I've talked about the bigger picture, people ask me, how am I supposed to make time for all of the things you say, Manwara, the bigger picture? Well, you need to be really strict around your own timing. And you also, I think there's a need for us in the sector to change or shift our mindset around what we see as important. There is nothing to stop you from carving half a day in a week where all you do is manage strategically. It's so important. Intentionality is important, because unless you plan and intend to do something, it's not going to happen. And shifting the way we work or the way our mind operates is not an overnight achievement or success. It takes a long time to set a routine which forces us to make time for thinking and time for managing strategically. It is so crucial that we think about the alignment. So I'm going to give you a powerful example. If the NCVO recent research data shows us that 90% of those working in the voluntary sector identify as being white. And during COVID, the part of the community that had the highest percentage of death, and also were the targeted communities, the ethnically diverse communities were the communities that were targeted for vaccination drives and information, etc. Why do you think that is? If we understand that lived experience is important for the communities that we engage with, I'm telling you that people like myself were able to engage the communities that the 90% couldn't. So we have a crisis, say the next global crisis we have. Who do you think is going to suffer the most? Those communities that will not engage with people that doesn't look like them, people that doesn't understand them. So those 90% that are working in the not-for-profit sector, you're not going to engage the ethnically diverse communities. So something has to change. You understand what I mean now when I say you need to understand the bigger picture? Because if you don't understand the bigger picture, you can't help the communities that you have set up to serve. There is no point being passionate in this community, in this particular sector, unless you really want to be able to serve during crisis. And I will tell you that if that figure doesn't change, and we don't have more than 10% people that can identify as being from ethnically diverse communities, the next crisis that happens, history is going to repeat itself. It will happen again. We will struggle to get into the Asian communities, the Muslim communities, the Black communities, because there's no representation at leadership level. So I would say to those who are following my journey and those who are listening to what I'm sharing today and over the next 3 Saturdays, please feel encouraged that you are needed to make that change. The other thing that the National Council of Voluntary Organizations research data shows is that nothing has changed in relation to leadership of ethnically diverse men and women. Nothing has changed in the last 8 years. The figures are the same. The representation is the same for the last 8 years. How will you be able to change that unless you take that leadership, unless you take that step and say, I will? Now, having spoken to quite a few women from Asian Muslim background, I understand that managing strategically seems to be a big barrier because most people in our sector are fantastic for being operational and getting the job done. We're activists. We're great at action. But the bit where we need to transition to prioritizing thinking and understanding the bigger picture, that's the bit that most people struggle with. And I would say for any organization who is listening to my short little learning, sharing, that you need to invest. So you need to invest in your leaders. So if you have like capable women or capable people from the Black and ethnic minorities, diverse communities that are capable, you need to invest in their leadership learning. And then another thing that's really key, and I found helped me elevate on my journey of leadership is coaching and mentoring. We learn from those who have gone through that journey. I can't begin to emphasize how valuable it is to actually be able to introduce coaching and mentoring within your voluntary organization or your non-profit organization, charity, whatever. Because it's very common in our sector when we grow for people that are fantastic at the operational level to go on and become leaders without the training in the middle. So that's often quite often missing because the investment isn't there, or the understanding that investment is required at that level isn't there, and people don't always get the right support. So my own experience has been that as well, where I have worked for organizations, asked for training so that I can grow onto the transition into doing more strategic leadership. And the recognition wasn't there. Not only was the recognition not there, there wasn't even an understanding or support around helping somebody to do their job better. If we remind yourself of evolution, in order to support evolution, we have to make sure that people are supported at every step of their journey so that they are more able to do their new job or fulfill their new responsibilities. So if you are not confident in how to manage strategically, find yourself a coach or mentor. It's money that's worth investing, or find training that you could go on and encourage your employer to support it. If your employer doesn't support it, you could try and get funding via a lot of different various grant funders, because that is certainly something that funders are now looking to fund. I am a qualified fundraiser myself, part of the Chartered Institute for Fundraising, and I know that there are, based on my experience in the last 2 years, it's being picked up by those funders, and many are open to suggestions. So think about the impact on the communities that you're working with and how we as community leaders can change that. Step up and lead your community. I hope that you found what I've shared today useful and helpful, and I will be back next Saturday. Wishing you all a lovely weekend till next Saturday. Bye.